Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, this is speculating season, because we're not really sure when free agency is going to start. Obviously, we've had a good few reports since the playoffs have ended surrounding the Toronto Raptors, rumors flying around and all those sorts of things, but now's the time we sort of want to throw out there the types of players that we'd like the Raptors to sort of go after. And obviously, there's a couple big names in this year's free agency, like Anthony Davis, Dragic on the Heat, but we're looking at guys that could potentially fit the cap range the Raptors could go at, but there hasn't been any specific rumors around them surrounding them yet. Obviously, the Montrezl Harrell one, we made a video on that last week, so he won't be brought up in this video.
Well, we'll look at guys that maybe are around what he would command. And Ben, we're really this season, and I'm gonna sing this from the Raptors. This season is about the Toronto Raptors staying in playoff or championship contention, not being necessarily a championship team, but we're looking at next season's free agency, landing the likes of Giannis, whomever, obviously the Giannis tracker. But I don't think that the Raptors are a destination if they fall out of playoff contention. They slip down to that 7th seed, that 8th seed, if they have a really bad next regular season. I think that they need to stay strong. They need to stay competitive, and that's why this free agency is not as important as next year, but it's still important, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously we have some guys leaving. We brought up Fred, we brought up Serge, we brought up Gasol, but so there might be holes to fill, and one area that has been looked at, especially where Gasol is the one that everyone expects to be gone, is filling up that sort of big position. And the first guy I want to talk about, he just got knocked out of the playoffs, Riker, Jerami Grant. He's been an absolute beast for the Denver Nuggets during their playoff run. He's 6'8", he's big, he's long. He can fill up one of those sort of small ball bigs on the court that we've been talking about, and the Raptors sort of went with in clutch moments during the postseason. And he can shoot the three. He played phenomenal wing defense and help defense on guys like LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George, all these sorts of players. And even though we do have a few guys, and I think his name was brought up on Raptors Reddit when saying that, he plays too similar to Siakam and OG and those guys, but those are the types of players you want on your team. Long wing defenders that can shoot the three, that can drive, do all these sorts of things. So I think even though we do have some guys that have a similar skill set, I think he would fit in perfectly with this Toronto Raptors team, right?
And you talk about personality as well. They have to buy into that 3-and-D system chemistry. I 100% agree he'd fit in, Ben, and he is the mold. You love the potential of playing that small ball lineup next year. You're like, I don't care if we lose Serge Ibaka. I don't care if we lose Marc Gasol.
I care if we lose Ibaka. I'm not.
But listen, I posed the question. I said, if the Raptors can't re-sign Ibaka, are their hopes done? Because I said basically their ability to compete next year hinges completely on Serge Ibaka, and you said that's not necessarily the case. So you're much more of a believer.
Yeah, but I want Serge back. I think we'll be fine. Just to preface this, because I want Serge back as much as any Raptors fan. But I do think we could potentially be fine with a small ball unit, but Serge will definitely be essential for us going forward, in my opinion.
And I'm not trying to debate you on that. I'm just saying if they can't, and we buy into the Rockets small ball lineup, we know that, of course, it still depends heavily on having your guys that slip into that center role being athletic, being large, but mobile, right? And that's when you say, would he work with the Raptors? The answer is yeah. And you look at his playoff output, obviously his three-point shooting dipped a significant amount. I think he was 33% or less and had a couple of 0 for 5, 1 for 6 performances. But on the regular season, obviously he's going to improve over the offseason. On the regular season this year, he was shooting 38, 39% from 3, 12 points per game, and a terrific defender. So this guy, I forget what you were saying. What was he looking at commanding?
There's an article came out. There was an article that came out and said they expect him to make around the $15-16 million range, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring him up, because in the Montrezl Harrell video, that's what sort of everyone is expecting he's going to get. So I'd much rather give that Montrezl Harrell money that we've been rumored to be throwing out there to a guy like Jerami Grant.
100%. I don't think anybody would argue that. I'd give him more money than $16 million, and I'd give him maybe a multi-year extension too. I wouldn't mind having this guy as a Raptor just moving forward.
Yeah, no, completely. Especially, and some people, because obviously Harrell, people argue he's a better rebounder. That could be debated, especially during these playoffs. But I think in general, Harrell averages more rebounds, definitely averages more points. But in terms of the style of play you want to run with, Grant is athletic, mobile, shoots threes, plays defense, and even though Harrell's a better scorer, I think Harrell's a better player in 2008 rather than 2020, 2021, or whatever.
Yeah, and if you're looking at, you're not bringing in a creator, a playmaker, but that would be the same thing if you're replacing any of our bigs with Harrell or any guy that can't do that as well. And so if you can put a guy out there that can defend, can shoot threes, it's an easy choice. But is he unrestricted or is he a player option, Ben?
I believe he's unrestricted. I think he has a player option, but he's going to turn that down from all accounts.
But I can't see Denver letting him go if he was maybe one of the more integral pieces of this team. I mean, obviously they weren't able to get it done against the Lakers, but he was looking nice alongside Jamal Murray and Jokic this year.
Well, I guess they have big decisions coming up with Paul Millsap. Obviously, he's an unrestricted free agent this year. He's been an essential part to that team, but Grant is the younger guy, so they might lean with going to him. But they have Jamal, they have Jokic on max contracts, they have Gary Harris, who's a guy that might look to get more money coming up. They have a lot of pieces. So Grant will sort of come in as a one-year deal. Jokic even mentioned how there's probably going to be some players leaving next year because they can't just re-sign everybody. They have a bunch of free agents, and that's why they made that midseason trade, sending Malik Beasley to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Who just got arrested.
I think there's potential. Yeah. that's some big news
Ben,
now.
Before we switch on to the next guy, and I don't want to dwell on him because there's more interesting people to talk about here, but you mentioned it as well. Like, they have some choices to make now around that sort of power forward position with Paul Millsap also being an unrestricted free agent. Would you like to look at Paul Millsap as well, or is that a guy that you disregard maybe due to age or his, obviously having less mobility and maybe a less good defender than Jerami Grant?
Paul Millsap's been a guy, if you look back to our OG podcast back in 2017 or when we got this all started, Millsap seemed to be rumored to the Toronto Raptors every single season, Ryker. It was a huge topic of discussion, Paul Millsap going to the Raptors, and I think he would have primed Paul Millsap would be a perfect fit on this team, especially going forward, the small ball, the defense, and all that sort of stuff. But now he's a decent 3-point shooter. He's slower. I'd love to have him on the team for not a lot of money. Like, if we could give him $10 million a year or something, then I think he'd be a perfect fit. But at his age presently, I don't know if a long-term high money deal would be ideal for Millsap, but who knows? But I don't want him taking any bit of like a Serge Ibaka or another big man's money.
Well, that's true. And this guy's 34. I think he's entering his 14th season. Like I said, I don't want to dwell on him as well, but if you're saying he's coming up and we're really talking about looking to fill in that 4 or 5 slot, he would technically fill into a smaller lineup, like a small ball lineup, with his ability to stretch the floor. But I'd agree, age is certainly a factor, and if you're going to be paying a guy upwards of $15 million or more, you kind of want him to be a younger player that you can develop around that still has maybe not reached their ceiling yet. So yeah, I like the sound of Jerami Grant. I think people would agree, but Ben, we have more people to talk about. We're already 8 minutes in. Probably could have just made a full video on Jerami Grant, to be honest, but let's keep talking about free agents.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about the big names. We'll make videos coming up too about more the role player, the lesser money guys in the market. But another big name, Ryker, he's been floated around. There's rumors we might have traded for him during the regular season, but Danilo Gallinari, I can't speak right now, but played for the Oklahoma City Thunder, took the Houston Rockets to 7 games, obviously a terrific 3-point shooter, and unrestricted free agent. OKC is a team that people know are trying to sell everything. They don't want to be good right now. I think their owner wants to cut salary and not be in the luxury tax and just ride on those picks and trust the drafting because they are a great drafting organization. But Gallo, his shooting, his ability to play defense, we talked about it during the regular season, Ryker, before the pandemic and everything happened, but he's a guy I'd love to see on the Toronto Raptors.
Ben, how many times have we talked about this guy when we talk about people we'd like to see on the Toronto Raptors? You mentioned...
Every time, brother. Every time.
Every single time. I said, this is the quintessential Raptors player. This guy, maybe his defense... I don't know. Is his defense up to snuff? Like, we're giving him credit here. I don't think he's as good as maybe we're giving him credit for. I think he might still be somewhat of a liability. But you can hide one guy who's not amazing at defense, and you're getting a guy that's playing 30 minutes per game, getting 20 points, around about 20 points, and for the past 2 seasons, shooting over 40%, Ben, from the 3. Over 40%. And how many people have we brought in saying that they could be potentially good perimeter shooters? They should come in and be able to get it done, and then they just suck. I don't think that you can say that about Gallinari. He's bounced around the league, and he's always been pretty consistent. He's just a guy that can flat out score, and he has height. It's like bringing in Lou Williams, but you know what you're going to get, and he's tall. And if you're looking at small ball lineups, that's the perfect player, Ben. I can't even say enough about wanting to bring in Danilo Gallinari.
Yeah, he's listeners.
But what's his market value?
That's the question there, because he's a guy that's had some injuries, and a lot of people thought his contract of about $20 million per year right now was a major overpay for a lot of teams just because of the injury situation. And even though he averages 20 points per game, he's not considered a star or close to an all-star, just a really good starter. That's sort of his label around the league. But now what he's done in Oklahoma City, obviously coming in there with Chris Paul and Shea and all those guys and completely overachieving, I think his value has gone up, but I don't know if I say in today's market, especially, we're talking relative to last year. All these numbers were thrown out. We're not sure how the salary cap is going to look. So if the salary cap is down by half because of lost revenues and all that, just adjust for that with considering the numbers we throw out there. But with that preface aside, I think he'll probably stay around the 18 to 20 million range, similar to what guys like Harold Grant, as we brought up. I think that's a range where we could sign a player to a short-term deal and keep one of our Serge Ibaka, Fred VanVleets, and maintain that flexibility for 2021 record.
Yeah, and you also have to look at the enigma that is the Oklahoma City Thunder, because I don't know whether or not he fits into their future, and I know that there's some arguments around them trying to completely reshuffle. Before the season started, they said this is probably going to be a one-year team, and then they're just going to go for a rebuild. But now, obviously, having success in the regular season, making it very close into advancing on to the second round, they might be looking at guys that were able to give them good output this year, and maybe they want to run it back, but just slightly modified. So I wouldn't be surprised if they give him a contract in the same way that I wouldn't be surprised if they let him walk. But I would say, Ben, he's given you a full healthy season. Everybody around the league says we want to play smaller, we want to play fast, we want to have the ability to shoot, stretch the floor. And this guy, he's been out there, he's doing that at a high clip now for 2 seasons. I'd say that his market value, has probably rose this year.
Oh, it's definitely rose this year. And to just say something about the Oklahoma City Thunder, apparently their team is losing money or whatever, especially with everything that's gone on. So they don't want to pay any money right now. They just want young players and those types of guys that they can develop and become a good team in a few years. That's what I've heard from the different podcasts and reports and all that. But that could be, as you said, we don't really know what's actually going to happen with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been a great franchise for a long time, but I think they want to retool to really get a championship contender, because they don't want to be a middle of the pack small market team. They know the way that they make money is just massive deals. So, but outside of Oklahoma City, there's going to be a lot of teams itching to sign Gallinari, and the Miami Heat are another team that's been sort of looking for those types of players. They almost traded him from the deadline as well. And I don't think the Heat will win the championship this year. I'm throwing that out right now. I think they'll either lose to the Celtics or the Los Angeles Lakers, but I think they look at their roster as one piece away, and maybe they overpay for Gallinari to bring that piece in, especially with how close they've gotten this year. So I'm in agreement. He might be a tougher guy to get, but I don't know. If we could get him, I'd like to sign Danilo Gallinari record.
Yeah, I'd pay him. But would you pay him on a short-term contract, or would you sign him? Would you give him a 3-year, a 4-year?
I think you sign Gallinari. You keep him, and
around.
If you need to reshuffle thing, I don't think his trade value will ever get too low to the point where you can't move a deal of him around where he's at now.
Because he's a guy that would have been nice, realistically, in that Celtics playoff series.
Oh my God, someone that could just put the ball in the hoop, man, would have been nice.
Yeah, seriously. And he's playing around guys that command the ball a lot, that dribble. He's not the primary guy. Like, he was third, fourth option on that OKC team. Obviously, the ball handled by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a lot, Chris Paul. So you can look at the same thing with Siakam and Fred VanVleet. So if you're looking at him as a third, it would work ideally on paper. On paper it would work really well. So I'd pay him. I'd give him money. I'd give him the bag.
Would you rather have Jerami Grant or Danilo Gallinari, Riker?
That's a tough one. How old is Danilo Gallinari? Because we're saying they're going to make around the same money, and Danilo Gallinari is a much more proven scorer. And if you're just looking at offensive output, that is more valuable for this Raptors team that typically struggles come playoff time with guys that are able to just consistently score. They look to that option. They look to guys, they go through these big stretches where people that are playing well throughout the regular season, they just seem to fall off come playoff time. And you can say the same thing. Jerami Grant did that this season. So if you had a guy like Gallinari in, he's able to hit threes no matter what the pressure is. You'd almost rather have him. But if you're stretching him out and you're giving away all your money, I don't know.
Yeah, he's 32 years old, but again, he's a shooter. He's one of those guys that shooters age well. That's what people say. I guess injuries might be a bit of a concern with him with his age, but in terms of his playing ability, I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff anytime soon. Grant is about 26, I believe, so it's the age factor. I think Grant fits more with our timeline, fits more with our style in terms of defense and all that, but it might not be a bad thing to have different types of players sort of come in, and by no means is Gallinari a bad defender. So we're talking about, because when we talk about Raptors good defenders, we're talking about guys that can absolutely clamp other teams, because Raptors have one of the best defenses. I think it was top 2 in the NBA this year, with players like OG Anunoby, Siakam, Fred VanVleet pesting people, Lowry taking charges, being a hound, Norman Powell's athleticism, Ibaka's blocking. He's not in the echelon of those types of players, Ryker, but he's not bad. He's not someone that you can't play, you can't have on the court during defensive stretches where you need to stop. He's not someone you have to completely hide.
No, because he has height, right? If Matt Thomas was out there 6'9", then you could probably play him for way longer as well. And Matt Thomas was actually serviceable. I know this is a completely tangent point, but when a guy has height and he can shoot, it just becomes such a valuable asset to have out there.
Yeah, and he's not slow, right? Like, in theory, Gasol, well, I guess Gasol's a good defender, but, some of those big shooters like Bertans or something, the Wizards had a horrendous defense, and he's a free agent too, but I guess the defensive side of things would keep me from wanting, but he's a good shooter too, but we won't get into the Bertans situation right now, but Gallo's not a guy where he's just completely immobile as a bigger wing to really guard people.
No, I'd agree. And now, Ben, we are going super long. This is an interesting one because we're still going to want to break down bigs. And if it plays out that the Raptors don't sign Marc Gasol, they may or may not sign Serge Ibaka, and cap space. I mean, we're sort of treading around the idea to say because of the contracts that the Raptors are potentially losing, they could sign a guy for $20 million on a one season and still have space for the bigger names like Giannis. But we could also make potentially a video to say, all right, if we just need a serviceable big, a traditional big, whatever, a guy that can rebound, and we want to pay him like $5 million to $10 million, we can make a full video on the free agents available for that. But again, this is one more about the more exciting players, Ben, and I think there's one or two guys left to talk about.
Well, I think we're 18 minutes in. Let us know. I think we can make this a sort of series, Ryker. Maybe get some more content because we don't want to. We want to really flesh out these types of players, especially where we're speculating right now and talking through things as Raptors GMs would or whatever we are theoretically being right now. So yeah, let us know in the comment section if you want some more of these like free agent talk videos. I know people like those sort of discussions. So yeah, you guys are the best for making this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. We got lots of cool content coming now these weeks. The off season's here. Ryker, any last words?
And a live video is coming, one of the first ever.
Bro, we're hyping it up, G.
Cheers.